Okay, so welcome everyone to this session. So for those who haven't been interacting with us, this is the third session that we have with our expert, Jennifer. The first webinar that we had was covering on the CV writing, the art of CV writing, and she took us through an amazing practical on how to write a CV. And that was a really amazing session. So we had like 2 sessions on that. And today we'll be having interview preparation for the data profession. So yes, I think she'll introduce herself once more for those who haven't joined this session, who haven't been joining these sessions. Maybe you can get to familiarize yourself with who Jennifer is, and then we'll get started. So all this is in courtesy of Zindi, and where we aim and hope to build our to create a community of vibrant data scientists across Africa who are solving region's most pressing problems and also world-class data scientists. So to you, Jennifer, you can take off the session by also introducing yourself.
Okay, so firstly, thank you all for joining the session. My name is Jennifer Oyelade. I'm an international talent acquisitions manager. I've been recruiting across Europe, Middle East, and Africa for over 16 years. On the Africa continent, I've recruited within most of the 54 African countries, but most specifically Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Egypt. So I've touched most of the countries within Africa, within the data space, and also covering various other disciplines, and also work with individuals and organizations on organizational structure, employee engagement. So I hope that you'll find the session interesting. And I've been privileged to be on both sides of the fence. So I've been a hiring manager, I've been an employee, and I've been an employer. So with the interview preparation that we're going to discuss today, I will give you the insights from various perspectives so you know how to prepare and how to ensure that you are selling the best version of yourself. So without further ado, let's kick off. So, as I said, this is the interview preparation for the data professional. It's a webinar that I have created to ensure that people are not just job ready from a technical perspective, but are you using the right tools to help you prepare? So the first area I want to talk about in any interview preparation is your research. Now, what kind of research do you do about the organization before you actually get there? So as we do in everything in life, everything requires planning. And the only way you're going to plan is if you do adequate research in order to ensure that you have all the information you need so that when an interviewer comes at you with various questions, you're very prepared to answer them. Now, with research, I've broken it down into 3 categories because there's actually 3 categories of research. So you have the company research. So that's the background on the company, their competitors, and their position in the market. So when we're talking about company research, a lot of people just say, well, I need to know who the CEO is, who my hiring manager is, how long has the company been in existence, etc., etc. While that information is good, that information can be found everywhere. And that's the research that everyone is doing. What you want to actually do is research on things that are not so obvious to the eye, and also things that will make the interviewer think, oh, wow, this person is really interested in our organization for them to have done this kind of research. So the kind of research I'm talking about is company turnover. How much money did they make last year? What kind of interesting projects do they have coming up? What kind of awards have they won? What is their, any kind of information that is not so obvious to the eye, because Google's your friend. All of these things you can find on Google. So rather than going to the company website and looking at the About Us, look and use your research to find out about things that are not obvious on their website. Also, you can also, if you can, depending on the relationships you have, also see if you can talk to other employees to understand what the nature of the company is, or what things are going on internally that you may not be able to find out on the internet. So when you're researching the company, you have to be very strategic about the kind of research that you do, because that shows the employer that not only do you just want to work for our organization, you're actually interested in our progress. So leave your company research to be as wide as possible, and this will help you while you're speaking to the employer. And I will give you examples of how this information will help you. The other type of research is the role. So apart from looking at the job description, but look at the people in the team, or if this role is going to be a replacement for another person who's leaving, or look at the various people who are currently occupying that role. Look at their background, their educational background or their experience, look at the kind of projects they've worked on, and all of these can be found on LinkedIn. So use LinkedIn as a tool to research about the people who are currently in that role. And if you, as I said before, if you can, reach out to a few of them. You don't need to tell them that you're interviewing, but you can come from an angle of, oh, you really like the work they're doing. How do they find the organization? And use various methodologies to get a bit more information about the role itself, apart from the job specification, because job descriptions are very generic. It doesn't really tell you about the culture. It doesn't really tell you about the role itself. It just tells you about your day-to-day activities. So, look into the role a bit more. Look at where the role sits in terms of the organizational structure, and do a bit more research, again, the background research on exactly what skills are required for the role through other people. And as I said, doing your research on LinkedIn, look at the previous backgrounds of these professionals. So and see if you can find some trends. So did they go to a certain university? Did they study a certain course? Do they have certain work experiences? It just gives you an idea about the role and the people who are currently occupying the role. Then the other research is the hiring manager. Now, doing research on the hiring manager is actually quite imperative, because you want to get an idea of the person you're meeting. So when it comes to engaging them, you can understand the approach to take. So again, LinkedIn is your friend. You can actually Google the hiring manager, know what their background is as well, how long they've been in the organization, and see also if there's any kind of soft skills or any kind of similar interests that you and the hiring manager have that you may be able to leverage on for future reference. So maybe the hiring manager is an alumni of your university. Maybe the hiring manager likes to play golf. I'm not saying that all of these will be written on LinkedIn, but if you can look at through LinkedIn and see if you can find some information about the hiring manager, or sometimes you can just put their name in Google. They may be a very thought leader, that they've maybe written articles before, or they've done some things outside of work that you can use that information to find a common ground in your interview. So imagine, for example, if for example, I'll use myself. I'm here with you guys doing a webinar, and somebody reached out to me and said, oh, I really like the webinar you did with Zindi. It was great. It was this, for example. We've already built a rapport, because maybe you're already studying data science and I'm doing a webinar on data science, and that automatically builds a rapport. So researching a hiring manager is to find different things you can use to build a rapport in your interview. So these three areas of research are things that are going to set the foundation for the actual interview itself. Okay, so I did mention this company research. So as I said, I'm now putting it into context so you can actually see it in text form. So as I mentioned, your company turnover. If it's a startup company, then research their series rounds, money raised, their investors. Again, all of this information can be found online. Again, company achievements. Did they win any awards? Did they launch a new product? Did they enter a strategic partnership with a few brands? So any kind of information that you have that you can leverage on in your interview. Again, the same with the role. Is it a new position? How many people are in the team? What are their professional backgrounds? What kind of key attributes have you found that they have that you can leverage on? Again, this can go into reaching out to people on LinkedIn with the rules that you are interested in them as a professional and the work they're doing within the organization, and see if they can be a bit more forthcoming about the work they do within their organization. Again, just like how I touched on before with the hiring manager, it just gives you some insight into their type of profession, and just gives you more information into them and areas where you can find some bonding. Okay, so dress code. Now, this is quite I wouldn't say a touchy topic, because you know, depending on the organization, depending on the sector, it can really vary. So what I found is that with startup organizations, in the new tech industry, they might be a bit more laid back, and they may look at dress codes that are smart casual. Whereas if you're working in a bank or in a corporate organization, they are very much about corporate dressing, because regardless of wherever you sit in the organization, you still may be in a client-facing role. So they are more about, you know, corporate wear. So when you're deciding on what to wear for an interview, you also have to look at the culture of the organization, as I mentioned. So, and you can generally tell the culture of the organization sometimes through their website and the colors they use and the demographics and things like that. Sometimes it could just be from the kind of posts that they put on LinkedIn and their social media handles. Sometimes you can get a feel for a company's culture by their communications, their branding, their communications, their engagement. You can get a sense of their culture. But at the same time, to kind of keep it safe, for men, I would say keep a nice plain neutral shirt. So your grays, your whites, your sky blues, your navies, your blues, and the blacks. And depending on the culture of the organization, with a tie or without a tie. So as I mentioned, in the in the tech firms that are, quite, young, dynamic, or, the more laid back, they might like smart casual. So in that case, you don't need to wear a tie. But in a case where, they're more banks or financial services or a lot more corporate organizations, it might be necessary to wear a tie. So it's all about gauging the culture of the organization through your research will determine how you would address the situation in terms of your dress code. Or in the terms of you do want to wear a suit to play it safe, I would suggest stick to plain colored suits, guys. So, again, your grays, your blacks, your navies, stay away from overly patterned shirts, because you don't want the interviewer to be distracted by the busyness of your attire. You want them to focus on you and the deliverables that you want to talk about. So keep your attire very simple, very plain, and less busy. Okay, so for the same for women, keep it very simple, very plain in terms of the bottom half of your outfit. Now, in terms of colors for the for the top half, look at colors that complement your skin. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with wearing red. There's something wrong with wearing blue, something wrong with wearing navy, as long as it complements your skin tone. So you want to take away the attention from your outfit and be more focused on you. Definitely, as professionals, we'd have to dress the way we want to be addressed. So keep it very smart, simple, and corporate, but at the same time, wear things that that complement you. Because as we know, in not just in interviews, but in the way things are generally in life, we have to dress the way we want to be addressed. If you notice when you go shopping, you notice that people maybe shop assistants pay more attention to the people who are dressed well, because in their mind, they may feel that they may have more money to spend. This is just a psychological thing, unfortunately, that we have to deal with. We're in a world where we do judge a book by its cover. So we have to appear the way we want to address. So in terms of dress code, keep it minimal with women, even with makeup. I'm not saying that you should, downplay your makeup, but look the way you want to be addressed in a corporate setting and be able to differentiate what you would wear to hang out with your friends and what you would wear to be addressed in the corporate world. Because as I always say, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. First impressions always count. Interviewers are not only just looking at what you say and how you say it, but they're actually looking to see if physically you have the corporate dress sense to blend into their organization. Okay, so here we're going to go on to interview techniques, which is one of my favorite topics, actually. So interview techniques. So interviewing is a skill set. It is something that you learn over time, how to be able to interview strategically and successfully. There are techniques for interviewing. There are techniques for answering questions. There are techniques for engaging a hiring manager without them actually realizing that you've engaged them the way you have. Now, one thing that I will tell you in interviews is how you answer a question is almost very critical in the way an interviewer will receive your answers and look at you as a professional. A lot of people make the mistake of talking too much and saying so many things without saying anything. Then you also have people who are guilty of saying less, feeling that they're waiting for the interviewer to probe them for more questions. So I've given you a formula that keeps that middle balance where you are saying enough to explain or expatiate on your expertise, and you're not saying too little that the interviewer has to probe you. Because one thing interviewers hate doing is having to probe. Can you give me more? Can you give me more? What you want to do is find that equal balance by talking enough, but you're not blabbing or you're not over talking that you're putting the interviewer to sleep. But at the same time, you're not talking less and the interviewer is getting the impression that you're not very competent just because you're not saying as much as you should. So there's a methodology that I use called the STAR approach. And these are a way to answer questions given exactly enough information without going overboard, and the interviewer can be able to analyze your competencies. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So the situation is set the scene. The task is what were you asked to do? The action is what did you actually do? And the R is what is the result of your actions and how did it affect your organization? So, for example, a lot of interviewers will say to you, tell me about a time where you were able to, manage this data or you were able to engage in this project. So here's an example. Okay, so here's an example of an answer you would give. So we were working on a customer churning project for Zindi. The project was to capture data the project was to capture data and delivered in reporting delivered in reporting format to executive leadership in Rwanda. I was tasked with initiating a data mining exercise. To do this, I decided the source of data and relevance to the project. So I gave an overview of an answer I would give in an interview. Now, this is a very short but very detailed example of what exactly I had to do. Now, if I was to break this down into STAR, I've used STAR in answering this question, right? But let me break it down for you step by step so you can see exactly how I've answered this question, right? So the situation was we were working on a customer churning project for Zindi, and the project was to capture data and deliver in reporting format to the executive leadership team in Rwanda. That's the situation. And the task was, I was tasked with initiating a data mining exercise. The action was, I deciphered the source of data and its relevance to the project, performed analysis to compare with other sources of data. That's what I actually did. And the result of that was to deliver a report that provided the answers and contingency plans, which increased the knowledge of the leadership team and provided further insights for execution. So I've actually told you in a very concise nutshell what I'm able to do. I've told you that I worked on a project. I've told you the skills I implemented, which was deciphering and performing analysis. And I told you the benefits, what that result did for the company and for myself, which is I was able to deliver the report to the leadership team, and the leadership team, through my work, were able to gain more insights for execution. So imagine if you go through every interview question, answering those questions in that concise manner. There is no way a hiring manager will say, tell me more, because I've told you everything you need to know. I've created the situation for you. I told you the task I was supposed to do. I told you exactly how I did it, and I told you the results of my task, right? So if you answer every single question you are given by our interviewer in that way, your interview questioning will be your interview answering will be very concise, straight to the point, and it should touch on your deliverables. Now, also in an interview, you also hear hiring managers say, what's your weaknesses? What's your strengths? What would you say your strengths are or your weaknesses are? Now, a way to prepare for an interview is to actually do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Now, when you hear SWOT analysis, you usually hear it in marketing in terms of strategy, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, but you can also use a SWOT analysis on yourself to self-analyze your strengths, to self-analyze your weaknesses, and learn how to leverage on that to be a better data professional. So looking at your career to date, or your education to date, or even as an entry level, middle level, senior level, wherever you are at your career, you can answer these questions comfortably. So you can ask yourself, as a data professional, what are your strengths? So for example, as a data scientist, you may be great at analytics, but you may not be great at engineering. Or, or from a data analysis perspective, you may be good at analyzing data, but you might not be as strong in report writing. So looking at your strengths as a data professional, list out comfortably and honestly, what are your strengths as a data professional? And at the same time, list out what are your weaknesses. Now, weaknesses are not a bad thing. What weaknesses do, it shows your area of development, your area of professional development. So if you are aspiring to be a data scientist and maybe you are not so great at analytics, then that's an area that you can take professional development courses on to strengthen your expertise in that area. So be honest with yourself with weaknesses and be comfortable enough to tell your interviewer what your weaknesses are. But what you will do is use that to your advantage and say, well, I know that my strengths, my weaknesses is maybe spending too long on a task, or I know that my strengths are not really in analytics, but what I have done to develop myself is I've worked on a lot of professional development courses, worked on a lot of projects, or participated in a lot of competitions to strengthen my expertise in that area. So you don't just give a weakness and leave it there. You give a weakness and you turn them into positive. So you tell your interviewer what you are currently doing to turn that weakness into a positive. So I've given you one from a data analyst perspective, and I can also give you one from a professional development perspective. So maybe someone like me is, I like to stay on the task for too long because I want to give it 100%. And what that does is other areas of work may suffer because I'm putting so much attention on one area. So what do? To combat that weakness, what I'll do is I will focus more on the task that takes a lot more of my time first, and then do the smaller tasks later. So my weakness, to overcome my weakness, I have learned to prioritize. So whenever you're asked about your weakness in an interview, don't just stop at your weakness. Give them what solution you have provided to your weakness, which has turned into a strength. Now, opportunities. Now, opportunities is knowing how to identify and leverage on your expertise for career development. So for example, if you're a student and you are a part of alumni in the data science area, what do you do, or what have you done to leverage on opportunities for career development? So for example, all of you guys who have joined this webinar, you have noticed there's an opportunity for you to professionally develop yourself, and you have taken advantage of it by participating in this webinar. So what you say in an interview when they ask you, oh, so, you know, when you're talking about yourself, when they ask you, tell me about yourself, don't only tell them about your education or your work experience, but tell them about the opportunities that you have been presented with that you've leveraged on. So if you've participated in if you participated in competitions, make sure that you talk about them. If you've worked on ad hoc projects outside of school or outside of work, talk about them, because interviewers want to know not just what you've done on your day-to-day, but what opportunities have you seen and how have you taken advantage of them. So talk about your opportunities, and if you haven't done so, then now's the time to do so. Don't just leverage on what you know, competitions you worked on, academics, your work experience. Go above and beyond to look for opportunities that you can leverage in an interview, because what employers like is people who have taken that initiative to go above and beyond their capabilities. So have they participated in competitions? Have they worked with other people on other projects? Have they taken that initiative in the workplace to add to their responsibilities? Have they taken professional development courses to expatiate their expertise? All of these things are seen as opportunities. Now, when we want to talk about T is known as threats. So what potential threats are there that can hinder your progress? So a potential threat would be that, for example, you know, financial constraints or professionally developing yourself. How do you work around that? Look at courses on either Udemy, on Coursera, that offer free courses for professional development. Another threat would be, you know, the competition in terms of, you know, people who are applying for the same roles as you. Then you have to think to yourself, what other professional development courses can I do that can leverage on my experience? So you have to look at yourself as a business, or what is the threat to my professional development if I don't look at these things and take them seriously? The thing that can happen, that can hinder your success, is if you don't continually develop yourself. So for example, on the Zindi platform, there's always the Moja hacks, the competitions. Always get involved in actively developing your career so that you will have minimal threats. So threats are only potential when you don't do anything about your career development. So as a data professional, you should always be seen to be doing more and learning, and also expressing in your interviews that opportunity that you use to learn and why you have minimal threats, because you're always on top of market experience, what's going on in the market, what's going on in the data science world, the future of work. All of these things are things that you should be looking into regularly so that you will have less threats in your career. And what this analysis does is it doesn't only help you answer questions in an interview, it actually keeps track of yourself as a professional and the things you need to do in order to remain relevant in an economy where jobs are changing every time. The economy is growing, the market is becoming volatile, and you really need to stand out as a data professional in a very competitive industry where talented professionals are many and opportunities are few. So now, here are my top 10 questions to ask an interviewer. Now, there's a very, very great trick to this that I've learned over the years. It's a psychological thing. Question asking, the way you ask a question, the way you answer a question is very, very strategic. And I'm going to give you my top secret, guys. So you guys are lucky to be on. This is like my top secret of how to ask a question and sell yourself at the same time, right? So here are my top 10. So what are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role? So here is how I would ask the question. This is my trick, guys, so hope you're paying attention. So this is my trick to ask this question. I would say, I'm somebody who is very diligent. I'm very hardworking and likes to hit the ground running. So based on this, what are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role? So can you see what I did there? I didn't ask the question first. I sold myself first. So psychologically, what you're going to remember is the first thing I said, not necessarily the question. So I'll use another question as an example. So what is a typical career path for someone in this position? So how I would ask the question is, I'm looking to join an organization where I can bring my knowledge and also grow to make an impact within this organization. I see myself in the next 3 to 5 years as a data analyst and maybe progress to a data scientist and maybe progress as far as I can go because I'm very career driven. Having said that, what is the typical career path for someone in this position? Again, what the hiring manager has done is you have captured their attention within the first 3 seconds with that questioning. The question only comes later. So by the time they answer that question, what is resonating in their mind is what you have said and not what you have asked. Now I won't go through all of them, but I'll pick my favorite one. So number 4 is another favorite one of mine is, the question is, what is the most important thing I can accomplish within the first 60 days? How I would ask that question is, I'm somebody who likes to join the organization, get really stuck in, understand the projects that are going on, understand exactly how the organization functions and really get stuck in. So if I join your organization, what will be the most important thing that I can accomplish within the first 90 days, within the first 60 days? As far as I'm concerned, I'm the hiring manager. I'm getting excited. I'm thinking, oh my God, this person already has plans. They already know what they want to come and do. They're already showing me that they're ready to come in and get stuck in. So which means that I have minimal training to do. And even if I do have training to do, I can see that this person is actively ready to, they're pumped, they're excited, they're ready to jump on board. And they're already asking me what I need to do within the first 60 days. So I'm already excited because I've seen someone who's not just excited, who's not just looking for a job, but is excited about the organization that they're joining. So number 6, what can you describe characteristics of people you consider successful in this department or company? So here is where you sell yourself. You say, so I'm somebody who's very analytical. I'm someone who believes that the work is not really done until it's done. I'm someone who really looks at a situation from a 3-dimensional perspective. And I believe with these characteristics I have made me successful thus far. And I believe bringing these characteristics is something that will really change the dynamics of the team. So having said that, can you describe what you feel are the characteristics of people who are successful in this company, right? Again, if you're answering all these questions correctly, they should be nodding and agreeing with you and then, throwing a little 1 or 2 things on top of what you have said. Or they should be saying, yes, exactly. Once you get that head nod and yes, exactly, you know that you're flowing on the same page as them. So yeah, what training and development is available for employees within the company? So again, I'm somebody who is an avid believer of self-development and professional development. I have a certification in data analytics. I've also participated in competitions to enlighten myself in various areas of data. I'm also currently undergoing an MBA. So this is an area where you talk about what you have done by yourself already. Then you say to them, well, as an organization, what do you offer in terms of training and development for the employees in your company? Because I feel that if I develop myself, it will be of additional benefit to you. And if you pour your resources into developing me, I'll be able to be the best employee I can be and remain loyal. Now, when as an employer, I'm hearing loyal, I'm hearing professional development, I'm hearing furthering my career. All of these things are what employees love to hear. So, I mean, these are again my top 10 questions. And guess once they share these slides with you, you can use these questions in your interviews, especially when an employer says, do you have any questions? I can't stress enough how very, very wrong it is when an employer asks you, do you have any questions? And you say no. I think it's almost like a shutdown at that point, because for them, if you're really interested in the role, if you're really interested in the company, then you should have questions for me. You should want to know more about the company. What are we doing? Talk about problems that we're facing. Yes, there's another question. Actually, I'll go back to it. Yes, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges that your company is facing right now? Now, this question, guys, is very important to ask. Now, where you're going to find out the answers to this is through the company research that you have done in the first place. So, for example, if I've done research on the company and I've noticed the company's competitor has just bought, another company, for example, I've done that through my research. Using question 3, what I would then say is, I know that company A, who is your major competitor, has just bought over company B, which obviously has changed the dynamics of your market penetration. How is that affecting your business right now? So they will then give you, first and foremost, they'll be very excited that you actually know what's going on in the market regarding the company. And once they've given you what their biggest challenge is, what you will now do in response to that is give a solution. You're not given so much of a solution that you are giving all your trade secrets away, but give them some form of solution to show them that, you know what, this person is thinking off the top of their head. They're not in our organization yet, but they're already thinking forward about what they can do to solve that problem. So you've always got to ensure that your company research is what is going to set you up for the interview questions that you are going to ask the interviewer. Now, these engagement questions, you will find that if you answer these questions correctly, you will find that the interview will be less about your competencies on paper and more about what you can deliver when you join the organization. And that's what you're aiming to achieve, guys. You're not aiming the conversation to be very transactional. Tell me what you did here. Are you this? Can you do this? What about this? How about this? That's what we're trying to stay away from. What we're trying to establish with these interview techniques is how to have an engaging conversation where you are selling yourself to the interviewer, they are buying into your expertise, and at the same time, you are bonding with that employer. And for them to say, you know what, I really like this girl, I really like this guy, I think that they're going to be a great asset to our organization. Let's hire them. And what you will find as well is that with this questioning, it will open the doors to many other areas that the interviewer may not even have thought about. So as I gave you the example of question 3, what challenges are they facing? From there, you can provide a solution. Then they can say, oh yes, we've actually thought of that. And that's a great idea, actually. Then from you having that great idea, they'll be excited for you to come on board to implement the idea you've just given. So always be very confident and have that engagement with the employer. So in terms of, questioning, ensure that before you going into an interview, pick at least 5 of these questions to ask. It's really imperative that you engage the interviewer, because these are the things that are going to set you apart from your other interviewees. Yeah, so thank you for joining the session. I am very open to answer any questions that you may have. I didn't want to deep dive so much so that I can give you guys an opportunity to ask any other questions that I haven't touched on, and to shed some light on some experiences that you have had, and see if I can be of help in, being able to prepare you further for interviews. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really an amazing and enlightening session. Maybe we'll open the floor for anyone who has questions. Okay, so Jasmine is requesting for you to share your screen on the questions again. Anyone who has a question? that they'd like answered from an expert interviewer. You can have it on the chat or you can raise your hand. Maybe as people are writing, okay, there's a question by Ruth. Ruth? You can, okay, just a moment. Yeah, you can try and mute yourself now.
Thank you, Jennifer and Delilah. Now, I might have joined a little bit late, but I just wanted to ask about the salary negotiation bits. When do you know when to stop? Because we're always told from YouTube, you see, you turn the question, you know, what are you willing to offer? And then you wait for them to reciprocate. So when do you stop maybe, and how do you just go about the whole scenario?
Okay. So for every role, what I'll also start with is every company has a budget. Before they even started recruiting for the role, they have a budget. And even within this budget, they have wriggle room. So what I call wriggle room is, they have room for, I would say, give or take 10 to 15% wiggle room of the actual amounts that they have quoted for a role. So in order to first and foremost reduce the level of negotiations that need to be made, in short, depending on whether you're going for a recruiter or direct hiring manager, it's always great to understand what the budget for the role is initially, right? That's first and foremost. Now, if they ask you, what are you currently earning? Not that I'm telling you to lie, but, in terms of, your remuneration, everybody aims to go slightly higher than what they're currently earning. So I would say at the same time, as they have 10 to 15% wiggle room, you should add or, include again, a 10 to 15% increase. Now, in terms of negotiation, if you get to the end of the interview process, by this time, they should already know if you fall within their recruitment process. Now, if they try to negotiate lower, what I would suggest is you have to sell yourself correctly in sense of, okay, this is what I bring to the table. I have X of years of experience. I've worked on A project, B project. I would, sell yourself as a pitch and say, I am being paid market rates. I have looked at research and know what people in this role are being paid, and what I'm asking for is not far off what the industry rates are. So the more you stick to your guns and show that you've done research, and again, if at the beginning of the recruitment process the salary has always been defined, then you will definitely have less negotiation. But what I will also suggest is do not go too low below what you're currently earning, because you will not get job satisfaction because you'll feel you've been cheated.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I think we'll have Mohammed, then Robert, and then follow up on the chat. Mohammed.
Thank you, Mrs. Jennifer.
You're welcome.
It's been a great section. So what I want to ask is that having an entry level, are we applying for an entry level in the data profession?
Yeah.
That you don't have much experience. So what should be the talking point? Because like using the STAR principle now, you have to talk on what you have worked on, challenges you have faced, and how do you sell yourself in that regard?
As a student, you can, because even within your coursework, even within your schools, or even within competitions that you've worked on, or even any kind of, this STAR methodology doesn't necessarily, is not just applied to people who have had work experience, but for people who have worked on any form of project, whether it's a competition, whether it's a, whether it's even within your assignment, you were given a task to do, when you're given assignments, you're given a topic, right, in order to do, and you're given a task and you have to deliver on that task. So even that, you can still use the STAR methodology in that regard as well. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mohammed.
Hi, Mohammed, can you hear me?
Okay. I can.
Okay, did I answer your question correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. You're welcome.
Great, thanks, Mohammed. Robert?
Thank you, Delilah. Thank you, Jennifer, for the opportunity. So I want to ask, okay, if they ask about your salary expectations, right? Then yes, previously you have tried to research what the person currently occupying that position is earning, but unfortunately you are unsuccessful in trying to get that information. Also, maybe coming from a perspective of a junior and someone who is just graduated from university, and they've never worked somewhere, but are still asked about a salary expectation. How can you go about tackling that question? Like, I've come from two perspectives. Yes, you worked before, but you didn't manage to get information on how much the person currently occupying that position is earning. How can you approach the salary expectation person? Also,
Okay.
you are recently graduating from university, you have never worked somewhere, but you are still asked how much is your salary expected? How can you also tackle that that question? Thank you so much.
Okay, so the good thing is that a lot of resources are out there, especially online, and also you can speak to fellow peers in the industry to ask what is the market rate for an entry-level candidate. So, for example, as I said, apart from resources online, you can speak to current peers who are, that in the data science world, and say, okay, roughly at somebody with 1 to 2 years experience, what is the average salary? So you can actually do your research and find out exactly what is, market rate, the average salary is for someone with your expertise. Now, you have to look at, when you're looking at salary and expectation, you have to look at what it is you also bring to the table in order to command the kind of salary that you're asking for. So, and this is why I always am very, very big on people who do professional development courses, because the more courses you do, the more exposure you bring to yourself, the more salary you can command. So if for example, if they're saying an entry entry level data scientist is at, I don't know, let's just say between 1,000 and 1,005, right? If I haven't done any certifications, or if I haven't participated in any competitions, and I'm straight out of university with kind of very little hands-on professional development experience, then ideally I will stay closer to the 1,000 end of the bargain, because an employer will not tell me that that's unreasonable. Whereas if I've done maybe a few certifications, I've participated in some competitions, I've had some form of exposure to the outside world, and I can go closer to the 1.5 mark and justify it to the hiring manager by saying, look, yes, I may be a straight grad, but I've participated in this competition, I've learned this skill, I'm currently studying for this course, I have more bargaining chips to offer than somebody who hasn't done much. So that's the way to kind of judge or kind of position yourself in terms of salary expectations.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks, Robert. So I'll just go through the questions for you, Jennifer. There's one that was asking, what if you don't have an experience, let's say like a student? I believe that you answered that.
Yes, I did. So just using your dissertation, tasks that you're given by your lecturers, projects that you've worked on in or outside of school, you can still, when you're talking, and the interviewer will remember, they know that you're a grad. They know that you're fresh out of university when they interviewed you. So use the STAR methodology to talk about things you've done in school or outside of school.
Great. Thank you. I hope that has been answered. Yeah, I hope, Rama, that has been answered. There's another question from the questions that you had listed out to ask an interviewer. What can be the answer to question 4?
Okay.
Yeah, there's someone who's curious around that.
Yeah, I can go back to question 4. So, yeah, so I did actually use this as an example, but I will say it again. So if someone if you're asking, you're the one doing the asking of the question, so the hiring manager will tell you what you can achieve. But how I would ask that question is saying, I'm somebody who likes to come into the organization, hit the ground running, learn more about what is expected of me, the tasks I'm supposed to do, the projects I'm supposed to be working on. Having said that, what is the most important thing I can accomplish in the first 30 days, in the first 60 days. So the hiring manager will tell you what they would expect you to accomplish. But what they will be happy about is that you've already told them what you would do coming in, meaning that you're already forward thinking, meaning that you already see yourself in the organization, and your enthusiasm about what you would want to achieve in the first 60 days has been spelled out for them. And all they would probably do as a response is add exactly what they would want you to do. Now, once they tell you what they want you to achieve within the first 60 days, you can use that information and respond and say, oh, that's great, because actually, when I was working in A, B, and C, I've done that before. Or during my dissertation, I actually worked on a project that was similar to this. Or when I was working on a competition at Zindi, we actually had a task where we did A, B, and C. So what it is that every answer that you are given by the interviewer, you will use that information to either throw another question or to show them where your expertise and that question marry together. I hope I've answered your question.
Ellie, you can put it on the chat if that was answered well. Maybe before I continue the questions, Michael, maybe do you have an urgent question? I see your hand is raised.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The question I have is actually in the chat, but I'll ask anyway since you have called my attention. So I just wanted to ask about having to follow up after an interview. Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation so far. I found it hard to get a question. So after an interview, and yeah, I feel like, and the interviewer tells me, okay, what a wonderful interview session. We'll get back to you on the result of the interview. So how do I follow up without sounding too desperate or aggressive? Okay. I think the question is yes.
Okay, so what I will do is after the interview, I will send a message to the interviewer saying, dear so-and-so, it was such a pleasure meeting you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed the session. I really appreciate the way you opened up to me about the role and its challenges. And I believe that given the opportunity to join the organization, I believe I'll be able to deliver on your expectations. I look forward to hearing from you soon and possibly engaging with you further, that kind of thing.
Oh, cool. So sorry for just to follow up again. So there are some organizations, their communication line is so, how do I put it, so closed that you may find it hard to probably be able to do this kind of follow-up with the mail you have been provided. Maybe they have been provided with mail of probably the admin officer, for instance, yeah, that you share the mail with. So how do I ask, or maybe get a contact that can reach the hiring manager directly? Or okay, how do you
So technically, if you look on LinkedIn, right, or if you go to the company website, you'll find that everyone's email address is quite similar. So in a sense of, for example, Zindi.Africa, right, is the website for Zindi. So everyone's email, and then you'll see that it might be careers@Zindi.Africa. So so one way could be the email, usually the email is either the name dot surname at the company or the first initial and and the name at Zindi.Africa. So but some of these email addresses are very easy to find, to be quite honest with you. And if you even Google their name and the company, you will find that their email address has been written somewhere. So that's one way. That's one way of finding out how to follow them up directly. And secondly, the most easiest way actually is if you find them on LinkedIn and send them a message. Because once you know their first name and their surname and you know the company, more than likely they'll be on LinkedIn. So you can send that message as a message in their LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll just go back and forth the chat and those who raise their hand. So on the chat, there's a question on how can I sell myself very well if I'm just starting out when I have only worked projects from courses and not any project in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you've just worked on projects, that in itself is still experience. So in some of my previous webinars, I've said all experience is experience, whether it's paid experience, project work, volunteer, these are still experiences that you can use the STAR approach to sell yourself to any hiring manager. What you guys need to understand is before they shortlisted you for an interview, they know your level of exposure and your level of expertise. So what these interview techniques is how to sell yourself above and beyond what they are expecting. So if you are, again, a student or with minimal experience, you haven't had work experience, and you've worked on projects, then use the STAR approach to talk about the projects you've worked on. Use the STAR approach to talk about volunteer work you have done. Use the STAR approach to talk about any kind of experience that you have had, paid or unpaid. It will still be relevant in any interview process.
Just to follow up, I think they mentioned also not in the particular field, maybe I'm coming in from healthcare or something,
right?
And
okay.
They jump into data science, yeah.
Okay, so if you're coming in from another sector, then what you can, and you are working on projects as well, what you can do is you talk about your transferable skills that are relatable to the data profession. So for example, if you're coming from IT is still a very analytical sector. You still have to be very methodical. You still have to be able to prioritize. You still have to be able to be technical and analytical. So use those skills that make you great at what you are doing now and use them as transferable skills to the data profession.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer, on that. I hope it was answered well, Helen. So we'll have Nee take over. Nee, I think you raised your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for this awesome presentation.
Thank you.
All right. So my question is, first of all, I'm the kind of person. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I'm this kind of person that I would say my strength and I classify it as a strength and weakness is being a perfectionist. So I like to go the extra mile basically. And then when you sit in front of an interviewer and then you're asked, tell me about yourself, sometimes I think I go too deep and sometimes I think I don't say a lot about myself. So I would like to, hear from your perspective what you really want to hear when you say,
tell me about yourself.
Because that actually sets the tone for the interview. And then I think it's like the first impression you make,
Exactly.
So, very important question. Thank you.
Okay, so tell me about yourself. Funny enough, I actually did something like this on a previous webinar. So when interviewer says, tell me about yourself. They don't want to know, oh, my name is Michael, I have 2.4 dogs, and I grew up in a Show on the line. That's not what they want to know. When an employer tells you, tell me about yourself, they want you to give them a snapshot of your career journey to date. So, for example, my name is Jennifer. I'm a talent acquisitions manager. I have 16 years experience working across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I studied I studied human resources because of my love for people. And then I also got a certification in the HR field just to solidify my experience in the HR field, to learn global practices in order for me to do my job efficiently. You know, that kind of summary is what they're looking for. So they want to know who you are, experience you've had, why you have gone down that path, and what you're looking for moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, awesome. The follow-up question was from Dinah, and she asked, from your experience, what percentage do the sample questions you shared have?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Sorry, Rose?
From your experience,
yeah,
what percentage do the sample questions you shared have?
From my experience, I'm not even saying this for saying sake, but I haven't, if these questions have been answered correctly, I have seen, and I'm not just saying this, I've seen at least a 90% hit rate. If they are executed the way I have spoken about it today, if they are executed, I believe it has a 90% hit rate. There's nobody that I have coached. I mean, these are what I've shared to you today is what sessions that I have one-on-one with people who are going for interviews as part of coaching. And there's not one person who has told me till date that these interview questions and this methodology of asking has not even landed them the job or got them at least through to the second stage of interviewing. Because these questions are psychological. It's not just about the questions that you're asking. You need to bear that in mind. It's the psychology behind it. So you are selling yourself first, asking the questions after. So it's not just about the question, it's actually what you say about yourself in relation to those questions that is the deal breaker.
Awesome. That's a really high percentage. Thanks, Jennifer, for the secrets you're giving us. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I should charge. Everybody put your currency. Don't mind me. No, but yeah, it's a very big secret that has, in fact, I mean, I've used it throughout my career. And once I noticed that it worked for me, I started sharing it with anybody who cares to listen.
Awesome. Dana, that's okay?
Definitely. Very constructive. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to George. You can unmute and share your question.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. That was very nice and always good listening to you. Just looking at the questions you put out there, I really like the bit about explaining, putting in a bit more, selling yourself before you ask the question.
Yeah.
But then just looking at the following questions. Question number 3, question number 6, 8, and 10.
Yeah.
So if you look at the first one about the opportunities and challenges,
yeah.
Then look at number 6.
Yeah.
Where you're asking about the characteristics of people who've been successful.
Yeah.
And then number 8.
Yeah.
Number 8, you're asking about the training and professional development available for employees. And in that case, I would assume you're asking about you joining or a joiner. And then the last one, typically how long people have stayed in that kind of role. Shouldn't you be a bit careful to look like you are not ready for the role and require training on joining? And sometimes some interviewers can be a bit rushed in that they expect you to start almost delivering results. But if you look at most IT roles, there's a bit of learning curve, whichever organization you join in, because it's very difficult to find the same kind of environment, the same kind of tools or platforms from where you've been coming from. So maybe just to be careful not to relay the fact that you are not quite ready for that role you're trying to join on, and then looking like you're too needy for training. I mean, training is necessary, but I think some people want you to hit the ground running.
Okay, so let me kind of expatiate. So training is relative. Even CEOs go on training today. Even execs still go on training. So training doesn't necessarily mean that you are incompetent, but everybody learns. I mean, we learn throughout the world. We learn every day. I mean, this webinar is like a training right now, right? So asking about training is only showing the interviewer that you are interested in your own development. So they already believe you have the expertise, or you wouldn't even be in the interview, or you wouldn't be sitting in front of them anyway. What you're asking in question 8 is that I am interested in further developing myself, because the more I develop myself, the better it is for you as an employer. So if I, for example, if I go out there and learn about data strategy from London School of Business, I'm going to take all of that information and come and bring it back to your organization. So asking about training and professional development is just asking, do you support learning? And I'm big on learning. I'm big on understanding knowledge, expanding my professional knowledge. So as an employee, do you offer that? Now, 10, in the sense of how long have people stayed in this role before being promoted, it then makes the employer think about their own internal strategy. So meaning that, oh, that's true. And that person may not have probably been in that role a long time. So that they'll be in a better position to say, okay, when I joined the organization, I was, a trainee, then I was promoted to a supervisor, then I was promoted to a manager. So it shows that you are interested in staying in that company for the long haul, because you are interested in knowing, how hard do I have to work? How long am I in this position before I am able to be promoted? It means that you want to graft, that you're a hard worker and you want to progress in the company, rather than taking all the information you've got for that company and go and give it to another. So that's the psychology behind question 10 and 3. And what was the other one? Yeah, 3, did you mention? Yeah, 3 is showing them that you are interested in that brand. You are interested in that company. You're not just looking for any job, right? You're interested in that company. You want to know, what are their biggest opportunities in this company? What are the challenges that they're facing? And remember, you would already, before you ask that question, through your company research, you would have Googled and seen the kind of the kind of opportunities. Maybe they just acquired a business. Then you've looked at their competitors. And by looking at their competitors, you will know that, okay, if their competitor just bought company A, that's going to be a challenge for them. And in the interview, you're going to mention that you know this. And how do you know this? Because you've done your research. And why have you done your research? Because you are interested in that brand. So all of these questions, they have 2 objectives. 1, to sell your knowledge. 2, to sell yourself. And 3, actually has 3 objectives, sorry. 1, to sell your knowledge. 2, to sell yourself. 3, to show them that you are an all-rounder, meaning that you are a problem solution provider as well as a competent potential employee. Because from every question that you're asking, remember, they're going to give you an answer. And from that answer, you will then use that answer to sell yourself even further. So think of it like a game of tennis. You've batted your ball, you've asked the question, they've batted their ball, they've answered you. You've now used that answer to even throw it back at them with your solution. And then it can keep on going back and forth like that until they're so satisfied with your competency that they know beyond a reasonable doubt that you can do this job.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Very good.
Has that answered?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Very good.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, George. So I'll follow up with a question by Brian. How can you advise a beginner who is breaking into the data field to approach interviewing? How can their CV stand out, being that they have less experience but have built some projects?
Oh, so you're gonna have to tune into the CV writing webinar, because that's a very long question. So, but to kind of summarize it, I would suggest highlight on your transferable experience that you've had. So getting into the data industry, there's certain skill sets that you would need to have. So depending on the industry you're coming from, I would suggest you highlight on those transferable skills and use them using the WHEAT methodology. That's why I believe you definitely need to look for the previous session on CV writing. If you use the WHEAT methodology that I've talked about before, which is explaining what you do, how you do it, the eventualities, the achievements, then you'll be able to use that with your transferable skills to highlight your relevance into the data professional world.
Brian, I hope that's okay, but I think we'll follow up on that and share with you maybe the webinars that we had on CV writing. I think they were really helpful, and Jennifer shared more info on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there was someone else with a question. Solomon, before we go back to the chat.
Okay, hello and good afternoon to everyone. Okay, so my question is, in recent years, I've seen a lot of startups in artificial intelligence and machine learning springing up. So based on your experience, have you perceived any differences in the interview processes of both the startups and then the established companies? And if yes, I mean, how do you prepare for interviews in both domains? Thank you.
Okay, so that's a good question. So what you'll find is that a lot of the startups, not that they don't know what they want, they do know what they want, but I find that in terms of their interview processes, I think one common trait is that they all do some form of testing of your ability, depending on the role, of your ability. And it's usually quite a general test, depending on the level at which they're hiring you for. It may just be Python or R, it might just be, basic testing in terms of coding. Then you also have some organizations that will then give you a presentation or a scenario to deliver and present to the hiring managers. So apart from these two, I don't see there's much difference in terms of the interview process. It's a mixture between your technical expertise and your personal expertise. So how well do you interview? Can you imbibe the culture of the organization? Are you a team player? And all of those kind of things. So I believe that whether they're startups or corporate organizations, there will definitely be some form of technical testing. And then the rest of the interview process would be more about, again, your knowledge of the organization, you're imbibing their culture, you being forward thinking. Are you someone that needs to be handheld, or are you self-sufficient? Are you self-motivated? A lot of all of those kind of skills will be deciphered during interviews like this. But I think the most common one is the technical expertise first.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Solomon. So we have a question from Wanjiru. How many stages of interviews do I typically go through? Or maybe does one need to typically go through?
Well, it really ranges from company to company. So there's no real number. I've been in situations where there've been 3 interviews. I've had 4, I've had 2, but I would say most interview process are a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4. And the process of that, again, would be it could be initially a technical interview before the face-to-face, or it could be a face-to-face interview before the technical, and then it could be meeting hiring managers, senior managers, exec. So it really could go any way, but it just depends. It just varies from organization to organization.
Awesome. Andrew, I hope that's well answered. We have, okay, I think Richard Taracha.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, I can now, yes.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, good afternoon and greetings from Kenya. Mine is rather an observation that I've made that it typically happens during the interview process. I don't know if you're familiar with the term ghosting.
Yes.
So it happened to me quite recently, basically, and depending on the company and the interview process, for most of this data analytics interviews, they present you the case study of which you need to find time in your busy schedule to undertake the case study that takes, I think, a maximum of 7 days, so that's a week, and then submit the case study. Depending on whether or not you did it to their standards, they call you for an interview where you get to present your project. So this happened to me. I did a case study. They called me for an interview with a few of the other department heads. I got to present my project, and the last thing they told me is they'll get back to me with an update, and that was back in February. Now we are heading to May. So my question is, and I think one of my fellow participants had asked, depending on the channels of communication. So what happens when they ghost you and you can't really get an update on how the interview process is going on?
Okay, did you follow up with an email?
Yes, I did. In fact, 2 follow-up emails, 2 of them.
2 follow-up emails. Yes. Okay. So this is really, unfortunately, this is really on a case-by-case instance. So it may not even necessarily be, so one thing you could do is follow up in a sense of, okay, not that I haven't heard from you, but, thank you for, I interviewed back in so-and-so, thank you for your time. I just wanted to have some critique feedback on my performance so that I can use this to improve on my interview skills, or if there's something that I could have worked on, come from that particular tip, because it may not necessarily be that they've completely ruled you out. It could also be internal issues where, maybe they've put the role on hold due to budgeting, other roles have become more of a priority, so on, so on, so maybe send them an email from a professional development perspective that, you just want to know if there's anything that you needed to work on, or is there anything that you felt was missing from your presentation, that from an informative perspective, and see what their response is.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. But just in addition to what you've just told me, what if you sent an email just asking for the feedback so you can in future cases, you can improve on what you missed on? What if you sent an email that and still don't get feedback from them? And just to add to that, you get to see via LinkedIn that someone else filled that position and you still haven't gotten feedback from the company.
Then they're a very nosy company.
Yeah, it's just an observation, because I've also noticed that many people are talking about the same thing. This thing about ghosting, it's happening a lot these days. Well, from Kenya, and it's happening a lot in Kenya. That's what I can.
Unfortunately, it's just the kind of people that we're dealing with in this day and age. I mean, I know it's hard sometimes to get back to everyone, but I think it's just maybe from an organizational perspective, there's something that that companies need to work on in terms of feedback, because we can only imagine how many people that they interview or see, in that retrospect. So I know it's quite annoying, but what I would suggest is maybe just kind of from another perspective, if you have like a mentor or a peer or someone that you look up to, kind of show them your presentation, for example, and say to them, oh, is there anything you felt that I could have done wrong here? Because it might not even be you. It could even just be somebody could have been just slightly stronger, or, it might not necessarily be you, but maybe any kind of case studies or projects you do that maybe share it with someone for their critique and their feedback, so if you're on the right track.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Now you're seeing Kenya's colors.
Yeah, unfortunately it's happening, but yeah.
I know, it's very annoying, to be quite honest with you. I mean, as I said, I've sat on very sides of the fence. I've been an employee, I've been an employer, I've been a hiring manager, I've been a candidate myself. So I do know how annoying it can be. And I also try my best not to fall into that trap myself. So I totally know how it can be.
Okay, thank you. So you have a question on the chat, Bekasti. What's the best way to respond to a question that you don't know the answer to?
I would be very honest and say, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure about this, but can you give me some time and I'll get back to you? And if you don't have an opportunity to get back to them, be honest and say, I have sufficient knowledge. If you have a little bit of knowledge, just say, I have a little knowledge in X, Y, and Z, though I haven't worked on it, but I'm willing to learn and I'm ready to learn and educate myself on this more. Should I join the organization or for my professional development, along those lines? Because the worst thing you want to do is say that you do know it, and then you're now thrown with a question about it in that same interview and you can't answer it. Everything just tends to go downhill from there. So be honest and say that you're not really familiar with it, however, that you are eager to learn, and you're a fast learner, and it's something that you can hit the ground running and get to speed up on.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Even in recollection to that, there's an interview I went and I was so honest, and they mentioned like that's a really good trait. It's good to admit it's something you can work on even when you get the role. So yeah.
Yes, and I will start the sentence with, I'm going to be really honest with you. It's something that I haven't worked on previously. However, what I can assure you is that I'm a very fast learner, and I'm easily adaptable, and it's something that I'm sure I can pick up on. But start with, I want to be really honest with you, because employers really appreciate honesty.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you. I think Robert's hand has been up. Robert?
Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you, Jennifer, once again. I'd like to ask if the interviewer asks me, why are you leaving your current job? Obviously, maybe the reason why I'm leaving, maybe the money is not that good, but yes, maybe the money is not that good. So how best can I answer that question? They ask me, why are you leaving your current job?
Okay, first and foremost, I would not say that the money is not that good. Secondly, you can say, well, you feel that the environment is not really challenging enough for you at the moment. You kind of feel like you have reached a place where you have, you don't want to feel stagnant, that you've kind of reached the most you can do in that organization, and you're looking for pastures new. You're looking for an organization where you can further develop yourself, where it's a bit more challenging, and you're looking for a role that's that is more in line with where you want to go in terms of your career.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Awesome. We have another question from Oye. So thank you for taking this piece. My question is, what should I do if I don't have the key skill required for the job, but I have other required skills?
So is this at interview stage or in your CV? So if it's in your CV, I mean, again, if you if you look at the other previous webinars and use the WEEP methodology, your skill set will stand out for you. Again, using transferable skills to write a CV that is relative to the data science world, then, I mean, if an interviewer sees that and invites you for an interview, it means that obviously you have some skills that they admire and they want to pursue further. Now, if you're talking from an interview perspective, focus on your strengths. And this is why it's always great to do a SWOT analysis of yourself. If you focus on your strengths and how your strengths are transferable to the job in question, then that should be able to sell you successfully.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. I hope that has been answered. You can confirm on the chat. So we have another question, which is, what approach can someone take if a hiring manager mails you that you cannot, they cannot further your application, but we will like to hear from you how we can help you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so this is like an open ticket, really. So if someone says that, you know, we can't further with your application, but we want to know how we can help them. So you can talk about maybe intern opportunities, or you know, would they consider hiring you as an intern? Or, you know, that what's more important to you is getting exposure and development. So if they can agree to that, and if you then join them as an intern, if you do excellently well as an intern, then there's still a possibility they can find a place to hire you. So if someone offers you that kind of open ticket, I mean, say, you know, you very much would like exposure and experience in whatever capacity.
I hope that was answered. Yeah, I can't see any other questions. Mostly they are thanking you for the session, Jennifer. It's been insightful. And yeah, okay, I think I have missed something. Okay, so why do you consider cover letters crucial? About cover letters, what is your pro tip for writing a cover letter?
Okay, so even though that's in the previous webinar session, but I mean, for writing a cover letter, I think you just need to focus on the role, not necessarily write 75 billion cover letters for different jobs, or you're going to have so many, but write a cover letter that highlights your skill set, achievements you've made, and what you can bring to this new job. I think that would be the best format in writing a cover letter. Don't focus so much on the job, but focus more on your skill set and how your skills are relative to the job you're applying for.
Awesome. I hope those questions have been answered. I don't know if me, George, or Robert have follow-up questions. I see your hands are still up. If there are no follow-up questions, you can put them down. Yeah, Robert.
Thank you, Delilah. Jennifer, I wanted to ask. I don't know if you answered that question already, and I probably missed it. But I wanted to ask you on weaknesses. They ask you, what are your weaknesses? Like, okay, maybe your strength. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I'm more interested on the weakness part. How can you answer that question? Because obviously you wouldn't want to expose yourself. So how best to answer that part?
So, you know, exposing yourself is not really an issue. It's how you can turn that exposure into a positive. So look at so for example, I think I used it previously. So for example, if someone is a perfectionist and likes to spend a lot of time on a particular task, So an employer will look at that and say, okay, I like the fact that he's a perfectionist, he likes to do it well. But then you can also say, because you're a perfectionist, sometimes you can waste a lot of time on that project. And what you have learned over the years is to prioritize. So meaning doing the most important projects that take up your time first, and then focus on the smaller ones that don't take too much time. So whenever you're given a weakness, don't just leave it as a weakness. You give you give the employer the solution to your weakness, or what you have done that has created that solution. So in the example I've just given, I've learned to prioritize because I know I spent a lot of time being a perfectionist. So whenever you're given a weakness, also give a solution of what you have actively done to curb that weakness. Because there's nobody that will tell you that they never have a weakness. We all have weaknesses, but it's not about the actual weaknesses. What are we doing about that weakness? That's it. That's what the hiring manager wants to know. What is that weakness, and what are you doing in order to change it from being a weakness?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. But the interesting part is, by coincidence, you just picked my actual weakness. I'm a perfectionist, so it just got me interested. Sorry, if you don't mind coming again, you say maybe for someone who is a perfectionist, what would you do to, to derive strengths out of that weakness? Like you're saying,
what I would do is if I'm a perfectionist, meaning that I spend a lot of time on work, I will learn to prioritize. So for example, if I know that it will take me, because of my perfectionism, and it takes me longer to complete some tasks. So what I will do is I will prioritize, meaning that I will create my schedule in a way that gives me enough time to do all the tasks I'm being given to the best of my ability. Does that mean possibly working nights, or possibly working days, or creating time outside of my work schedule to do so? Then possibly, but that's what you do in order to ensure that you are delivering at the level that you want to deliver, and you're still working within the time frame that you've been given.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really needed that answer for a long time. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad.
Great. Nii, do you have a question? Okay. I don't know if Nii can ask, but anyone whose question has been locked out, or anyone who has a question that they want to be addressed before we wrap up? Okay, great. I don't think I'm seeing any questions coming up, but in case you have a question, I think Jennifer had shared her LinkedIn. I think she'll share it again. Yes.
Share it again.
Okay. Okay, so there's a question that has come up. How can one prepare for a virtual interview?
I believe it's exactly the same process, because whether you're sitting in front of someone directly or you're sitting in front of a system, is still the same thing. What I would suggest though is that one thing I've noticed is that when we're having virtual interviews at home, we tend to be a bit more lazy about our presentation, and we tend to be a bit more relaxed and don't have that, that corporate interview feel, because we are at home. So what I would suggest is, if possible, go to one of these shared offices, or go to an office, or go somewhere that's not your home, basically, to conduct these interviews, because there's that level of I'm dressing up and I'm leaving my house gives you that sense of I'm going to an interview. And the environment that you're actually conducting those interviews in gives you that sense of I'm in an interview rather than I'm at home. I find that your presentation is different. The way you speak is different. Also have a very nice, clear background. preferably a white wall or, you know, a very clear background. Make sure that your internet connection is very stable. The same thing applies to your dress sense as you would do in a physical interview. Make sure that your posture, you're sitting upright. And when you're engaging with the interviewer, if they're more than one, make sure that you're locking eye contact with everybody that's on that call. But I believe everything else, the methodologies are still the same.
I hope that answered job. Yeah. Any more questions before we wrap up? And if you have a question that maybe you find it, that you recall it during the week, you can again.
Okay, I'll put my details in the chat.
You can have a chat with Jennifer. Yes, and she'll get back to you. Great.
So that's Jennifer. Oh, yeah. MP. There we are. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to share your feedback on how this session went and previous sessions. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to me either on interview questions, CV, career questions. And I also put a lot of things up on LinkedIn. At least for last week or two, I've been a bit quiet, but generally I put up a lot of nuggets and just little things that, you know, just pop into my mind that I feel to share. So also feel free to connect with me and follow me so that you can be receiving some of those updates.